Hello everyone. Well, this is one of those weekend videos on a weird, obscure topic. I'm going to talk today about opportunity cost. So, let's talk about it right now on A Cup of Joe. This is that part of the video where you listen to the song and click subscribe. Opportunity cost. Basically, it's the cost of a decision as measured by all of the other alternative decisions that you could have made. And that sounds totally weird, but let me explain it here with a real simple example. Let's say you have $5 and you arrive at a cafe and you can have a sandwich or you can have soup. You can't have both. Each costs $5 and all you have is $5. Well, the actual cost of the soup and the actual cost of the sandwich is $5. That's obvious. But the opportunity cost of the soup is that you don't get to eat the sandwich. And the opportunity cost of the sandwich is you don't get to eat the soup. And when it comes down to it, what's going to drive your decision isn't the cost of either of them. It's going to be the opportunity cost of not eating the other one. You have to choose which one. This is a very simplified example of opportunity cost. This comes up in rendering a lot, especially with an on-premise farm. The farm will be full, production will be juggling priorities. It's clear that the amount of load on the farm is already not going to finish by the morning, and an artist will come along and say, look, I really need to get some procs. I really need to have some compute power applied to this job. And what I would often say to that artist in this situation is, well, which of your fellow artists do you want me to take it away from? Who doesn't get the procs? In other words, this wasn't about how do we get them procs. This was about who do we take the procs away from so that they can get those procs. Now, often when I presented the artist with that choice, they really didn't have a solid answer. They wouldn't say, well, Fred over there is less important. It's a pretty hard thing for an artist to just point to another artist and say their work is not as important. Put mine on the farm. But what we would often do is say, well, we need to take it back to production, right? And they're going to make a series of choices based on what's going to finish. This is an example of opportunity costs. Production knows they're only going to get so much through on the farm that night, so they're going to make a series of choices based on the opportunity cost of what's not going to render. This is why the highest priority jobs tend to get rendered before the lower priority jobs, because they're constantly doing this opportunity cost analysis. It's not always easy to quantify opportunity cost. Applying a dollar value to these decisions before you make them is not always so simple. Additionally, there's often a near infinite number of choices that you could otherwise make with that money. But when it comes down to it, you can only spend that dollar once, and you have to figure out what you're not going to spend it on before you figure out what you're going to spend it on. Now, in finance, it's often a lot easier to quantify that choice. A company might say, hey, we have $100,000 of spare cash. Do we put that $100,000 into production capacity, or do we just put that $100,000 into the general stock market for 5 years? Well, what finance and other decision makers are going to think about is, well, if I put that $100,000 into production capacity, how much money am I going to get? How much additional revenue over 5 years am I going to get by putting in that $100,000? If I put that $100,000 in the market, how much additional revenue am I going to get? Generally, financial folks can make some assumptions based on those choices and actually quantify choice A versus choice B. Now, the numbers may not be exact, but they can at least quantify to some extent some estimates on both sides of the equation. But when it comes to the infinite choice problem, that might seem daunting when you first sit down to do this exercise. Let's give an example of going on vacation. Let's say you're going to go on vacation and you have to start an infinite number of choices on where to go around the world or around the country. When faced with all these choices, it can be too much to digest, but you can probably fairly quickly choose the 5 places you most want to go. And you already know that that's more than you can handle. So those 5 choices can be the finite choice that you then judge your decision based on. Now, I'm not saying real cost doesn't factor in. In fact, you might find of those 5 top choices that you just came up with, one of them, the fancy one, costs twice as much as any of those other 4 choices. Well, now you can quantify that the opportunity cost of that very fancy package, that very fancy choice, is 2 full vacations otherwise. So again, you're weighing up the opportunity cost. You're going to spend the same amount of money maybe in all of those choices, but now you can see the opportunity cost is I'm giving up 2 vacations so I can go to this one fancy vacation. Again, you're weighing the opportunity costs. Now let's take it back to the render farm. Let's face it, that's what this channel is about. And you might be saying, hey, I need more procs. We need to buy more procs. You might go to management and say, hey, just buy more procs. This isn't an opportunity cost conversation. This is a real cost conversation. Just spend the money and get us some more computers to render on. Well, again, management and production and the studio are going to have to make some hard opportunity cost analysis decisions. What else would they spend that money on instead of procs? Well, it could be more procs, could be more storage. Maybe it's better benefits or adding more artists. It's a hard choice. There's only so much money to go around. Again, they can only spend that dollar once on something, and they have to figure out of the full array of choices, and they're all really good choices and really important choices, any one of which would make a portion of the studio very happy. But they have to choose which one, right? It's choosing between a series of choices. The opportunity costs can be much more to calculate and to assess than the actual cost of the decision, the real dollar cost. So when you're about to consume a resource, when you're about to spend some money, when you're about to add some files to storage, when you're about to ask for more core hours on the farm, you need to ask yourself, and you need to work with your team and your unit and your studio and your production, and constantly ask yourself, what is the opportunity cost of this decision? When I get this resource, are there other opportunities that aren't happening? Are there other artists who aren't going to get that resource, who are going to be going idle now? You have to always be looking at the full opportunity cost. Your average everyday artist doesn't even have visibility often on all those opportunity costs, and they often just see it through their narrow vision, and they should be focused on their shot and their job. So I don't fault them for that. But without the full knowledge of the full opportunity cost matrix that production and finance have to go through, it is often hard to judge whether or not that was the best decision or not from the artist or the technician's desk, right? So if there's one takeaway I'd take away from this conversation is whenever you're going to be spending money or time or resource, make sure you're looking at all the alternatives and what you're giving up to make that choice. What's the opportunity cost? Secondly, try to have a little empathy for those folks who do have to make those hard choices within a studio. They're often poised with 5 or 6 really great alternatives on how to spend that money. They're all really good alternatives and they're all desperately needed, but they can only spend it on one of those alternatives. And that's the opportunity cost conversation that's constantly happening within a studio. That's opportunity cost in a nutshell. I strongly recommend you Google it, check it out. Try to weave the concept of opportunity cost into your decision making for home finance choices, for work finance choices, for everyday personal life choices. Try to think about what's the opportunity cost of this decision. Thanks, everyone. If you're still here, amazing. Thanks for sticking around. Check out this cool ending with this cool aerial drone shots that we took here in Vancouver. See ya. Let's talk about it right now.